scene of the first European Grand Prix of 1982, at which all the constructors have appeared. For only 14 cars contested the San Marino Grand Prix after the defection for political reasons of the mainly British FOCA teams. So, with a magnificent new pits complex built since last year to improve working conditions and safety, hopes were high for a Belgian Grand Prix free from acrimony and with clean, close racing. But the greatest unhappiness imaginable occurred before race day. In the closing stages of the last practice session for today's Belgian Grand Prix, motor racing and the world lost a much-loved and truly courageous sportsman when Gilles Villeneuve, fighting to improve his starting grid position, hit the March car of Jochen in a 150 miles an hour accident which must intensify the need to reduce cornering speeds and improve Grand Prix safety. Villeneuve's Ferrari was completely shattered and the driver hurled against the catch fencing. Tragically, heart massage and specialist treatment in Louvain failed to save his life. 30-year-old French-Canadian Gilles Villeneuve made a sensational Grand Prix debut with McLaren in the 1977 British Grand Prix, after which he was contracted by Ferrari, for whom he was to drive in 65 Grand Prix, winning 6 of them and becoming the idol of the fanatical Italian motor racing tifosi. In 1978, his first year with Ferrari, Villeneuve established an immediate reputation as a tremendously competitive hard charger. In the last Grand Prix of the year, he achieved every racing driver's ambition, victory at home. Villeneuve wins and 100,000 cheering Canadians go wild with delight at the first ever Grand Prix win by a Canadian in, of all places, Canada. 1979 was Villeneuve's best year. 3 wins, but none of them as hard fought as his battle with René Arnoux for second place in France. And Arnoux does it, does he? And Villeneuve locks up. And Villeneuve has had to go wide, and Arnoux's on the inside as they go round Villeroy. He's got the shorter line. He's got second position. He's got second position. He's through. They bang wheels. He's off. He's off. And he's back again. René Arnoux off the circuit and back again, and now Villeneuve's in second position, and this is the last lap. And Villeneuve goes over the corrugations, and he nearly loses the front as they go up to Parabolique on the 80th and last lap. And he's back, he's in second position. Villeneuve is second in the Ferrari. Down to third position goes Arnoux. A perfect example of Villeneuve's gritty, fighting spirit, which endeared him to motor racing enthusiasts. It was the same 2 months later in Holland when, after contesting the lead for 36 laps against Alan Jones, he fought his punctured Ferrari back to the pits with unforgettable determination. '80 was a barren year, but last year he won at Monaco and with another fighting drive took his last Grand Prix victory in Spain. Now Villeneuve's only got to put his foot down, and Villeneuve in the Ferrari wins from Laffite, Watson, Reutemann and De Angelis. The Spanish crowd justifiably goes mad. The last time that Gilles Villeneuve mounted the top step on the victory podium. In his tragically short career, Villeneuve spent 2 years in uncompetitive cars, fighting every foot of the way. But sometimes even his talent wasn't enough, as at last year's British Grand Prix. And off goes the Ferrari. Into the catch fencing goes De Cesaris. Alan Jones is off. So out of the race is Alan Jones, Villeneuve and De Cesaris. This year, in an improved car, Villeneuve led in Brazil and finished third at Long Beach before being disqualified for a technicality. 2 weeks ago, in the San Marino Grand Prix, he fought a bitter battle for victory with his teammate Didier Pironi. Last lap. We are around the Tamburello and see Pironi now. He's going through.
He's got to come down the inside. He's got it. Oh, he's going wide. Oh! Fantastic stuff. They've changed places on 2 laps running in Pironi now. All he has to do now is keep it pointing the right way and no mistakes, because there really isn't a passing place. Unless Villeneuve can have a go up here, there aren't really any more passing places on the lap. So it looks as if Pironi's done it.
So, in his last ever race, Gilles Villeneuve, married with 2 children, and one of the most exciting and talented drivers in the history of Grand Prix racing, just failed to win. Disenchanted with Ferrari, he was strongly tipped to drive for the British Williams team in 1983. But sadly, it was destined not to be.
Laudas großer Gegner von Long Beach, dort war er trainingsschnellster und hat auch 16 Runden lang geführt. Der Teamkollege von De Cesaris, Bruno Giacomelli, hat große Rückenbeschwerden, hat nicht das ganze Training mitmachen können. Wurde von einigen Ärzten behandelt, ist aber heute am Start. Durch den kompletten Rückzug Ferraris sind zwei Fahrer ins Starterfeld gekommen, die an sich nicht für die 24 schnellsten qualifiziert gewesen wären, nämlich Jochen Maas, der dieses tödliche Missverständnis mit Villeneuve gehabt hat, und Mauro Baldi mit dem zweiten R-Aus. Der Engländer Nigel Mansell auf Lotus war voriges Jahr hier in Zolder Dritter, der erste englische Fahrer seit James Hunt, der auf dem Siegerpodest eines Grand Prix gewesen ist. Während unserer Tonbandinterviews haben Sie, glaube ich, die Startaufstellung gesehen. Noch einmal, also erste Reihe Prost Arnoux, zweite Reihe Rosberg Lauda, dritte Alboreto De Cesaris, vierte Mansell und Piquet, fünfte Patrese und Watson, sechste De Angelis und Winkelhock, siebente Daly und Cheever, achte Giacomelli und Jarier, neunte Laffite, Salazar, zehnte Warwick und Henton, 11. Fabi und Sura, 12. Serra und Bösel und 13. Reihe Jochen Maas und Baldi. Was heißt das? Die beiden Brabham BMW Turbo von Piquet und Patrese sind also zum ersten Mal seit Kyalami Südafrika wieder im Rennen. Zwischendurch hat Bernie Ecclestone ja auf den Ford 8-Zylinder-Motor zurückgewechselt. Es hat dann vorige Woche dieses Ultimatum-Fernschreiben von BMW an Bernie Ecclestone gegeben. Entweder du baust wie vertraglich vereinbart sofort wieder unsere BMW Turbomotoren ein für den belgischen Grand Prix, oder wir betrachten den Vertrag als gelöst. Groß im Bild sehen Sie Dieter Stappert. Er ist der Rennleiter von BMW und er ist Österreicher, er kommt aus Kärnten. Im Bild Nelson Piquet, der Weltmeister. Gibt das Zeichen, den Motor anzuwerfen. Es ist eine eigenartige und deutlich gedrückte Stimmung heute in Zolder. Der belgische Grand Prix ohne Zweifel überschattet durch den Unfall von Villeneuve. Und Sie haben vorhin Maas und vor allem Lauda gehört. Es gibt, glaube ich, keinen Fahrer, der da so schnell wegstecken und einfach überwinden kann. Es war wahrscheinlich auch der berühmte Blitzableiter-Effekt der Formel-1-Fahrer, dass sich gestern nach dem Trainingsabbruch und nach der neuen Trainingsaufnahme, und zwar ungefähr eine Stunde nach dem Unfall, 8 Fahrer noch in ihre Autos gesetzt haben, um einfach dieses schreckliche Erlebnis loszuwerden und noch zu fahren. Von einer Zeitenverbesserung war natürlich gar keine Rede mehr. Ich kann mich aber erinnern, dass Jackie Stewart 1970 nach dem Todessturz Jochen Rindt in Monza mit Tränen in den Augen einige Minuten nach dem Unfall seine Trainingsbestzeit gefahren hat. So viel über die psychologischen Belange des Formel-1-Fahrens. Hier haben Sie den Stand der Weltmeisterschaft eingeblendet. Prost 18, Lauda 12. Und Keke Rosberg ist, obwohl er keinen Meter gefahren ist, in den letzten Wochen vom 1. auf den 5. Platz zurückgefallen. Schwierigkeiten bei Lotus. Und zwar ist es der Wagen von De Angelis, der angeschoben werden musste. Eine Aufwärmrunde auf dem 4,24 Kilometer langen Kurs von Zolder. Den Rundenrekord hält Jacques Laffite mit dem Ligier, aufgestellt 1980 mit 1,20,88. Voriges Jahr Trainingsbestzeit Reutemann 1,22,28. Diese Bestzeit wurde von Prost bei Weitem geschlagen. 1,15,701, Schnitt 202 Kilometer pro Stunde und um 7 Sekunden schneller als Carlos Reutemann bei seiner Trainingsbestzeit im vorigen Jahr. Das ist die Schikane gewesen. Dann geht's bergauf und an dieser Stelle ist gestern der Unfall passiert. Genau hier war es. Hier war der Überschlag, mit dem der Ferrari von Gilles Villeneuve ins Bild gekommen ist. Dieser Knick wird vollgefahren, 280 km/h im 5. Gang. Was in Zolder sehr wichtig ist, das sind die Bremsen. Alle Fahrer, alle Wagen haben heute stärkere Bremsscheiben. Die Bremsscheiben erhitzen sich in Zolder aufgrund der beiden Schikanen auf 600 bis 700 Grad Celsius. Darum bei allen Teams, wie gesagt, stärkere Bremsscheiben, die die Autos natürlich etwas schwerer gemacht haben. Gewichtslimit 580 Kilo und seit neuestem 580 Kilo zwischen Start und Ziel. Es ist das Nachfüllen von Öl und Wasser ab jetzt sofort verboten. Sie kennen den schmutzigen Trick, mit dem sehr viele englische Teams das Reglement bis zum Zerreißen strapaziert haben. Das hat ja dann auch zu den Disqualifikationen von Piquet und Rosberg geführt. Zolder, eine der zwei Rennstrecken auf der Welt, in denen es...
A third of the way through the 1982 World Championship, Alain Prost leads Niki Lauda by 6 points, with Michele Alboreto and Didier Pironi tying for third, ahead of Keke Rosberg and John Watson. But with yet more litigation imminent in this sadly contentious season, Nelson Piquet and Rosberg could still get their disqualified Brazilian Grand Prix points back. And on the starting grid, it's Prost and Arnoux fastest, ahead of Rosberg, Lauda, Alboreto and De Cesaris. As a mark of respect, Ferrari have withdrawn Pironi. So Jochen and Mauro Baldi will compete today. The engine revs rise and the Belgian Grand Prix is on. And Mansell is stationary. Mansell is stuck. And off go two cars right at the beginning of the race. It's Salazar and one of the Alfa Romeos, Giacomelli. It's Giacomelli in the Alfa Romeo and Salazar out at the beginning of the Belgian Grand Prix. And Nigel Mansell is stuck, getting a push start.
Yes, that's most unfortunate for those two cars. It's so narrow, the track there at Zolder at the start, that really when one car stalls like that, there goes Derek Warwick just getting away, a bit of a late starter. Both drivers all right. The car's probably not damaged very much. It was just a little bump and things, but it's so narrow. When one car stops on the grid, it's almost inevitable that contact will be made. And we've had a lot of start line accidents at Zolder. I really think that they should widen that track there for the start.
Lap one then, and soon we will see, we hope. Well, it's one of the Renaults, that's for sure. And behind him is Rosberg, and I can't identify which of the Renaults is in the lead at the moment, but certainly it is Renault's first and third with the very determined Finnish driver Keke Rosberg. It looks like René Arnoux, and it is René Arnoux who has had such terrible luck this season. And up behind Alain Prost is Niki Lauda in the Marlboro McLaren. And tyres, as ever, are going to count in this race. So Rosberg second, then Prost goes through, then Lauda, there's Alboreto, there are Patrese and Piquet, and through they go. And you will have noticed that Derek Warwick had a bad start at the beginning. So one lap has now been completed. There is the spread out as they go down to the canal turn, with the enormous canal you will see in the background as they turn. There it is. And René Arnoux is, as he has done so many times before, leading from the start with Rosberg, Prost, Lauda, De Cesaris, Alboreto, Patrese, Piquet, and there is Elio De Angelis in about 9th position. Now this is the second lap up from the chicane.
I see some yellow flags waving up at the chicane at the top of the picture, just in the background there. But we didn't get a chance to see what the incident was, but it looks as if somebody's gone off there.
Well, René Arnoux will be praying, I'm sure, even this early in the race, that he has car reliability this time. You will recall at San Marino he had the most appalling luck. There is the very talented Alboreto, still ahead in the Candy Tyrrell of the two-turbo BMW Brabham cars of Patrese and Piquet as the leader goes through.
Yes, Alboreto has certainly come on a lot, and it looks now as if Ken Tyrrell's put together a much better car than he has had for the last couple of years. Alboreto impressed a great deal at Imola in the last Grand Prix, but it was difficult to make comparisons then because it wasn't a full field there, and there weren't, of course, all the FOCA teams. But he impressed there, and he's certainly confirming it here. He's qualified very well indeed. He was very quick in qualifying, and he's at the moment doing a very competent job in the race.
Well, let's watch carefully Keke Rosberg. I remind you that in second place he is in the new FW08 Williams car. He is on Goodyear tyres, and the leader, René Arnoux, is on Michelin. Tyres are going to be very, very critical in this race. and as the fuel loads lighten, we expect to see them go a lot quicker. And now you look down and you can see the gap. When I took it on the stopwatch, it was 4/5 of a second between the yellow and white turbo Renault in the lead of René Arnoux and the white and green Williams of Keke Rosberg. And Rosberg closing right up at the very, very tight right-hander, and then it's Prost, and already Lauda and Watson are starting to chase him.
Yes, it looks as if Lauda's trying to find a way around Alain Prost. I think it was interesting, that helicopter shot that we had. You see how the Williams closes up in the corners, the chassis obviously doing a lot better in the corners, and now the turbo goes away on the straights. It's the old story that we get every Grand Prix these days. Brawn against brains as far as chassis performance is concerned, with the strong, powerful turbo engines that they've got, but they can't get them to go quite as well around corners. There he goes, closing up again. Now they're on the power, and he starts to fall back. Look at that Renault accelerate. A small difference in visible acceleration means a really huge difference in power output of the engines. Now they come onto the main straight, and we'll see if we get a shot down there that the Renault really stretches his lead. Lauda climbing all over the back of Prost, but of course stuck when he gets to the straights.
And behind Niki Lauda is Andrea de Cesaris, and see now how Keke Rosberg seems to be getting the measure of the leader Arnoux, but Arnoux pulls away on sheer power there, as does Prost behind him in third place. But it's a terrific race at the opening of this 70-lap Belgian Grand Prix. I remind you, René Arnoux leads, Keke Rosberg second, there they are, and Lauda's going through and taking Prost up into third position. Goes the determined Austrian Niki Lauda, with Prost behind him, and then de Cesaris.
Yes, excellent piece of driving by Lauda. He was looking at the manoeuvre the previous lap, practicing it, possibly working out how he's going to do it. Here we see it again. He's obviously come through the two previous corners very well to get that close to the Renault, and he's been able to outbrake the heavier Renault into the corner. And I think he'll now go away and chase Rosberg. But of course, I think Rosberg looks to me as if he's going to go a lot quicker than he is at the moment. If he can get past Arnoux, he's going to have the same problem, and he'd be well advised to have been looking in his mirrors then, although he probably couldn't have seen what Lauda did, and picked that as probably the only real passing spot on the circuit for him.
And Keke Rosberg, of course, has got a score to pay off, because he had his second place cancelled from Brazil.
De Cesaris is through as well.
Right, so Alain Prost, as he did in the previous race at San Marino, looks as though he has struck trouble. And that is the World Championship leader, Alain Prost, 6 points ahead of Niki Lauda. And now, look at the battle between Arnoux and Keke Rosberg is going, and he's through! Into the lead goes Keke Rosberg, and this is lap 5 in this 70-lap race.
Incredible place to do it, between the two right-handers. That's the most extraordinary piece of opportunist driving, but he succeeded with the manoeuvre, so full marks to Keke Rosberg. Of course, having to take every opportunity with these runners. If they present one, you've got to pass.
That's Prost. It looked to me as though Prost put his hand up and is out of the race. Let's check. There goes Niki Lauda. Well, we'll have to take another check, because Niki Lauda goes through, and could it have been Arnoux? Where is Arnoux in relation to Keke Rosberg? It must have been René Arnoux. I saw a Renault, and I saw that it is. Niki Lauda is in second place, and on lap 6 then, we have the sensational situation that it would appear this early as though René Arnoux, the race leader, is once again, with his bad luck jinx striking, out of the race. Alain Prost is down, and there is the Renault pit, and that must be, we'll get a close look hopefully in a minute, René Arnoux. 2 World Championship Grand Prix to his credit in the past, but today is not going to be another one. And now it looks as though we're going to have the wonderful sight of the Williams. There it is with Keke Rosberg, and I remind you, particularly our viewers in Australia, that last year Alan Jones was in this commanding position, having fought his way up into the lead ahead of his teammate Carlos Reutemann, and Jones went off, badly scalded his leg, and now we have another Williams in the lead this year, a new car, Keke Rosberg, with the ex-world champion Niki Lauda in second place. There is Rosberg, that is Lauda, third is De Cesaris, fourth is Arnoux, and then Patrese.
The thing that Keke has to do now, of course, is just settle back and get into a nice steady groove. I don't think he has to worry about Lauda at this stage, although Lauda is on Michelin tyres and Keke's on Goodyear, so it'll be really a case of seeing which tyre holds up the best. As the race progresses, the marbles will build up on the outside, and so therefore both drivers will have to take it extremely cautious. But Lauda, I think, is in a very good position. He can pace himself off Rosberg, and Rosberg is the one who has to set the pace, so it's going to develop into quite an interesting situation.
Undoubtedly going to have a very grueling race physically, and it's important then, therefore, for anybody who can get in front to get away a bit in order to have a cushion against which to relax the driving a little bit later in the race.
Well, now watch Andrea De Cesaris in the Alfa Romeo, because it looks to me, with Rosberg going through, and there is Lauda, as though De Cesaris is closing up. There is De Cesaris, there is Prost 4th, Patrese 5th, Alboreto 6th, and John Watson, it looked like, in 7th position. Keke Rosberg, and he is on lap 8 in this 70-lap race. Lap 8 then. Keke Rosberg in the Saudia Williams leads that man that we're looking at now, number 8, Niki Lauda, winner at Long Beach, back after 2 years of absence from the sport, and they're disappearing down towards the chicane, the red car of Andrea De Cesaris. Through the chicane goes Rosberg, down towards the long left-handed Sterrewacht, which is a third gear corner, change up into 4th, and where is Niki Lauda? We should see the red and white Marlboro car. There it goes, there is De Cesaris. So the first 3 are quite spread out, and you are looking at number 6, Keke Rosberg, 5th in South Africa, disqualified from his 2nd place in Brazil, as Alain Prost, number 15 in the Renault, has got a turbo car behind him. It is not, however, a turbo Renault, it is the turbo of Riccardo Patrese, who, like his teammate Nelson Piquet, had endless trouble in practice. Rosberg completes a lap.
Lauda und De Cesaris. Wir sind in der 8. Runde. Alain Prost angegriffen von Patrese. Patrese überholt Prost. Wir haben das in den letzten Rennen schon sehr oft erlebt, dass Alain Prost bei einem Grand Prix gut startet, dann aber Platz um Platz zurückfällt. Noch einmal auf der Geraden aus dem Windschatten heraus versucht Patrese an Prost vorbeizugehen. Das ist die erste Kurve nach den Boxen. Übrigens mit einer sehr gefährlichen Boxenausfahrt. Ich hoffe, dass es dort nicht zu hektischen Szenen kommen wird, denn die Fahrer, die in den Boxen waren, kommen sehr ungünstig wieder auf die Rennstrecke hinaus. Sie müssen ganz langsam fahren und sie haben die Start-Zielgerade im toten Winkel. Das heißt, der Fahrer kann im Rückspiegel nicht sehen, ob gerade jemand mit 270, 280 die Gerade entlang kommt. Der Fahrer muss sich umdrehen im Cockpit, um zu sehen, ob ein anderes Auto herankommt. Hoffentlich passt jeder auf. Rückspiegel der Formel 1 sind sehr klein und in der Hitze des Kampfes haben die Fahrer schon sehr oft vergessen, in den Rückspiegel zu schauen. Jetzt ist auch John Watson an Prost vorbeigegangen. Prost hat sicher Schwierigkeiten mit seinem Renault Turbo und ich glaube nicht, dass der Weltmeisterschaftsführende heute noch sehr lang fahren wird. Beim gegenwärtigen Stand des Rennens hätte Niki Lauda auf alle Fälle den Franzosen Prost an der Spitze der Weltmeisterschaft bereits eingeholt. Denn Lauda ist Zweiter, würde 6 Punkte machen. 12 plus 6 ist 18 und bei 18 Punkten hätte im Aufschwung Alain Prost. Was wir jetzt nicht sehen können, der zweite Boxenstopp von René Arnoux. Damit wird René Arnoux heute keine Punkte mehr machen. Rosberg vor Lauda. Dritter De Cesaris. Zwei Achtzylinder von Ford, Cosworth vor dem schnellsten 12-Zylinder, dem Alpha von Andrea De Cesaris. Ja, ich finde immer sehr schön.
Well, we rejoined Zolder and the positions haven't changed. If anything, Rosberg has increased his lead just fractionally. Lauda seems to have settled in, and so indeed is Patrese. Patrese is doing very well in the BMW engine Brabham. He's up into 4th place. So it looks like just for the time being they're all playing a bit of a waiting game and sorting each other out. And in the meantime we'll switch back to Murray Walker and James Hunt at Zolder.
Very, very unhappy because Nigel Mansell was a brilliant third and was last year was the first Englishman to be up on the victory podium since James Hunt. And away goes Keke Rosberg now. Now he will be attempting, of course, to build himself that cushion between himself and Niki Lauda. Niki, who is a very experienced and wily tactician, may well be biding his time. It is still early in the race. This is lap 11, and you can see the lead that Rosberg has got over Lauda, and there is De Cesaris going through in the Alfa Romeo in 3rd position, followed by Patrese and Watson, and it is very clear that the MP4 McLaren cars are very well suited to this circuit. Lauda in 2nd position, Watson climbing up all the time, and there is confirmation. Fastest lap so far, Niki Lauda, 1 minute 21.3, slower than the lap record.
Yes, the Marlboro McLaren team must really be applauded for bringing the car on. I think Niki's helped a lot with the development, but since they built the car last year, it has steadily improved. They've done, obviously, an effective development program. I think it made its biggest strides when Niki joined the team, whether that was coincidence or whether it was his help, but undoubtedly Niki's a very experienced test driver, and the car is now, I would say, fully competitive, certainly amongst the Cosworth engine cars.
Prost dropping back and Michele Alboreto catching him. Nelson Piquet goes through. There is Derek Daly and De Cesaris. And Jean-Pierre Jarier in the Osella is in about 10th position. There is Jacques Laffite well down in the Talbot, which wasn't going at all well in practice. And both Jacques Laffite and Eddie Cheever despondently said that their cars were now too old. They're desperately waiting for the new JS19, which is definitely going to appear, Guy Ligier says, at Monaco, which is the next Grand Prix. Coming up to the start of lap 13 in this 70-lap race. And the question is, can Niki Lauda do anything about the gap between himself and Keke Rosberg? Patrese goes through. There's the turbo, BMW-powered car. It is said that the Brabham team were not particularly anxious to run this car at Belgium, and that they had an ultimatum from the BMW outfit to say that they would withdraw the engines and all the facilities that they had been given if Brabham did not run the turbos, and they have done so.
John Watson's having a good race by the look of things. That's him just following Patrese there in the Brabham, and from what I can see, they don't really appear to be losing much ground to the leaders, and with the length of this race to go and a few dropouts, it looks as if Watson could well be up there supporting Niki Lauda, or even possibly having a go to race him.
Lap 13 out of 70, and in the lead, Keke Rosberg. From 2nd place, Niki Lauda. 3rd, De Cesaris. In 4th position, behind De Cesaris, and coming up well is Riccardo Patrese. Then behind Patrese, John Watson. And we look down now on the Brabham BMW. Patrese and Watson. And Patrese has extended the gap. This is the man, Riccardo Patrese, who spent 4 years with the Arrows team. There he goes. Until this year. So at the end of the 12th lap, on lap 13, with still a long, long way to go, Keke Rosberg is very much in command from Niki Lauda, with in 3rd place Andrea De Cesaris. Then behind De Cesaris it is Patrese and Watson and Alain Prost slipping down the field all the time.
still locked very much in the same position. Rosberg still trying to get away. Lauda, as Murray said earlier, with all his experience, will be probably whilst trying to conserve both his own energy and strength and his tyres, I feel sure we'll still be desperately trying to keep that gap from getting any larger, and preferably trying to close it a bit. No doubt that Rosberg will be charging full out at the moment.
It is easy to complain, but whilst we're watching Rosberg and Lauda go through, and with the knowledge that De Cesaris will be coming up in third position, I hope the producer will take us down the field a bit, because Alain Prost is now having a terrific scrap with Michele Alboreto, and that is for 6th position. And if Alboreto can get ahead of Prost, it will push the Frenchman out of the World Championship points situation, because 6th place is the lowest place you can finish in and score a single point, and it will put the redoubtable Michele Alboreto, who has made a terrific name for himself this season, up into that desirable situation. And we're looking now down from the helicopter at the race leader, Keke Rosberg, and if he keeps going as he has been going for the whole of this race, it will be a wonderful victory. First time out. There goes into the chicane. Now you see the gap as they accelerate away up the hill and then down towards the tail armour between Rosberg and Lauda. Well, I know that there are a lot of viewers watching Channel 9 out there in Australia. I hope the weather is as good for you as it is here in Belgium. Bright, clear and dry after a very wet practice period. You're watching Andrea De Cesaris on lap 15 in this 70-lap race. This is the young star who was in pole position at Long Beach. There goes Patrese through. Now, leader goes through. That's Rosberg. Second is Lauda. Third coming towards you is De Cesaris. Now look back and you see nothing, because we go with him down the straight into the Sterrenbach. That's the left-hander, which leads down to the right-hand third gear canal turn.
Yes, it's a very important race for Andrea De Cesaris here, because he's still got to prove himself after his basically good performance at Long Beach, until he did do, unfortunately, what was predicted of him, but admittedly a lot later, and that was to put it into the wall when he got pole position there and led the race for best part of up until about half distance before he assaulted the wall. Well, he led some of that and Lauda passed him, but he's crashed in at almost every meeting last year in one way or another, and this of course will not further his career unless he can keep it on the island. But at the moment he's having a good race, he's up the field, and so he's very much under the microscope to see if his performance is going to be worthwhile. He's old enough now, he's a young driver, but he's old enough to stop crashing if he's going to do well in the future.
Well, John Watson in 5th position. That's interesting. Now we can establish. There goes Lauda through in 2nd place. De Cesaris, the next one up should be for Riccardo Patrese, but now on lap 17 we are looking again at De Cesaris, having seen Rosberg and Lauda through, and this is the battle for 4th place. Patrese in the Brabham BMW, Watson in the McLaren, and there is Alboreto, who has got ahead of Alain Prost and Nelson Piquet. There he is, the second of those two cars, the world champion, who is having a thoroughly miserable year. He has yet to score a world championship point in 1982, and I can't think of a year in which the world champion is into the 5th race without a single point. His turbo BMW car went off the course at Kyalami in South Africa. That was the first time it had been used, after which the Brabham team switched to the Cosworth engine, and this is only the 2nd time the BMW's been used. Now there is Alboreto. There is Prost, and Prost, I think, is going to be taken soon by Nelson Piquet. 7th position, Alain Prost. 8th position, therefore, Piquet. There's the Renault. There is Piquet. And a hard charger coming up behind Piquet. It's Daly, Derek Daly, in the second of the two Williams cars, the FW08. And off. I saw somebody.
Pits. I think he was headed for the pit. Oh no! Well, look at the dust. Maybe he wasn't.
That was Prost.
Yes, the pit entrance is around there, but it's hard to say whether that was a mistake. But Prost, I was just going to say, has been developing a queue behind him. Yes, it appears that he has gone into the pits. Yes, there goes Prost into the pits. He must have been in trouble because he was building up a big queue behind him, which is a sure sign, of course, that the car's slowing down, going backwards through the field. Let's see what they're doing to it. Well, they're giving him some fresh tyres. That is routine, of course, in a pit stop to change the tyres. We don't seem to have a very clear view of what's going on.
Well, the interesting thing is that once again we've had the situation, and this is lap 18, we have had the situation where the Renaults have been tremendously fast and impressive in practice, pole and second fastest positions, only to falter during the race. Now, Prost had this situation in South Africa. He came into the pits and took on tyres, and it looked to me from the shortness of that pit stop that that was all he did here in Belgium. And after he had taken on fresh tyres in Kyalami, he drove an absolutely classic race on fresh rubber, drove right through the field and finished in first place. A quite incredible achievement.
Yeah, of course, you have to remember that in South Africa he had the great advantage of having much more power than everybody else because of the altitude of the circuit. With the turbocharged engine, they can push through the normal inlet pressure that they want just by turning the wick up a bit, whereas whoops, there's somebody making a mess. I couldn't see whose back view that was, but it appears without any damage or suffering. So, of course, Prost in South Africa, the turbo cars were just way faster than the others, and it was a bit of a processional thing for them. It was a bit of a foregone conclusion. It only made the race slightly interesting by going into the pits.
Now, Rosberg is closing up on a tail-ender, and Lauda looks closer to me than he did before. And the tail-ender is Raoul Purcell, and Lauda is very definitely less than 3 seconds behind Keke Rosberg now. And this will be his opportunity to close right up on the pin. Let us hope he is not balked by Raoul Purcell. This is lap 19 in this 70-lap race. So, Rosberg is past Purcell, and De Cesaris is closing up on Lauda.
Yes, it's nice. We've got our leading three are now concertinaing together a little bit. But unfortunately for our own excitement, but very fortunately for Rosberg, he's managed to get through past Purcell okay, who I imagine must have moved over and let him through. Lauda goes through successfully. But Lauda have been inching closer for the last 5 laps or so. Let's see if now that he's in sort of striking distance, whether he can get right up to his tail.
Lap 20 out of 70, and Keke Rosberg leads Niki Lauda by the gap that you have seen. In third position, it is still Andrea De Cesaris in the Alfa Romeo, and there are the first 3. And behind De Cesaris in 4th place, it is Patrese. Then in 5th position, it is Watson. 6th is Alboreto. 7th is Daly. And Elio De Angelis into the pits. So that's both Lotuses, both John Player special cars into the pits. Mansell out, and this is very significant. Tyres are being changed.
Yes, it appears to be only tyres. So that's one Goodyear user, one Michelin user, who have both been in to change tyres. Whether that we are in a marginal tyre situation or not will remain to be seen. But there go the leaders. They look quite happy and healthy at the moment. But of course, as Murray says, the significance of that is that if some are having trouble with their tyres, then it's quite possible that many others will. And they're usually running, most of the teams will be running a similar sort of compound. The turbo cars, of course, are heavier, so they work their tyres a bit harder. In Prost's case, his car would be harder on tyres than the normally aspirated cars with their extra power and extra weight.
Lauda, De Cesaris, Patrese, Watson und Alboreto, das sind die 6 Fahrer im Augenblick in den Punkterängen. Dann 7. Daly, dahinter Piquet, Jarier, Cheever, De Angelis durch den Boxenstopp also zurückgefallen. Laffite ist jetzt 11. Dann Henson, Maas bereits 13. Serra 14. Flaggensignale, das heißt überholen lassen. Diese Dieses Signal wird üblicherweise nach Zügern gezeigt, damit Sie in den Rückspiegel schauen sollen, wenn Sie jemand überrunden will. Niki Lauda ist schneller geworden, 1,3 Sekunden, nur noch der Rückstand von Niki Lauda auf Keke Rosberg. Alain Prost wird von Rosberg gleich überrundet, wenn er das Tempo nicht steigern kann. Ungefähr 150 Meter der Abstand zwischen Rosberg und Lauda. Das heißt, der Windschatten wirkt gerade noch auf der Geraden. Die Windschattentricks der Formel 1 kennen Sie ja sicherlich schon aus unseren vielen Formel 1 Übertragungen. 1,3 Sekunden zwischen Rosberg und Lauda. De Cesaris ist gleichfalls näher an den Österreicher herangekommen und hier haben Sie es deutlich gesehen, De Cesaris 3 Sekunden hinter Rosberg und 1,7 hinter Lauda. Möglicherweise wird es also in den nächsten Runden zu einem Zusammenschluss des Führungstrios kommen. Lauda 1,9 jetzt hinter Rosberg. Dann De Cesaris zurückgefallen auf 5,2, Patrese 13, Watson 14 und Alboreto 23 Sekunden, Daly dann 28, Piquet 33, Charrier 35, Cheever und Laffite 36, die beiden Ligier, Talbot, Matra 12 Zylinder unmittelbar hintereinander, 12. Henson, 13. Maas, 14. Serra und für unsere Schweizer Zuschauer Marc Surer in seinem großen Comeback-Rennen an 15.
We join Zolder in pretty much the position that we left it. The first three placings are Rosberg, Lauda, De Cesaris. Watson very hard on the heels of Patrese. I think it's only a matter of time before we see a change in position there. I think the cars seem to be very equally balanced at the moment. I think that Rosberg, I noticed, was sliding a little bit more than what he was at the beginning of the race. Now, whether this is the tyres starting to go off or not, time will tell. But I reiterate what I said earlier on. I think Lauda is in a perfect position. He's pacing himself very well. He's allowing the gap to be static, keeping Rosberg on his toes. And I think that we could see him make an attack very, very shortly. Of course, De Cesaris is in there as well. So Lauda will have to be very careful that he doesn't hang back or relax too much. Otherwise, he'll have young De Cesaris on his tail, which is not a very good situation for any driver. And now we rejoin back to Zolder to Murray Walker and James Hunt.
My thinking that he would go a lot quicker on new rubber seems to have been awry. Rosberg leads. There he goes. There is Lauda. This is De Cesaris. There is Prost. Number 15, Alain Prost, rapidly seeing his chance of adding to his World Championship points disappear. And Niki Lauda, on the other hand, now on lap 23, has got the prospect of at least 6 points for this race if he can keep going. And let's see where he is. That was Rosberg through. And Lauda scrambles past the arrows of Marc Surer and laps him in the process. And if Lauda gets those 6 points, it would make him equal with Alain Prost in the World Championship at the head of it, provided, of course, that Prost doesn't keep going and get a point or two himself. So, Surer there in the middle. Lap 24, Keke Rosberg leads. Niki Lauda in second position, De Cesaris third, Patrese in fourth position, Watson in fifth position, and in the last World Championship score point position, Michele Alboreto, seventh Daly, eighth is Nelson Piquet, and in ninth position, Eddie Cheever. Alain Prost in the pits again. And Alain Prost out of the pits again. It looks as though he's got absolutely fresh tyres on, in which case he's going through them at an incredible rate.
Yes, I don't know, maybe he's just doing a test session now. I mean, sometimes when one is out of the running for a race, it's been not unknown for some teams to sort of start doing in and out of the pit stop, just like in a testing session where you're changing things on the car and trying to get it right. But I got the impression that there was something more than just the tyres wrong with Prost's car. I know he changed them when he went into the pits, but that's fairly routine. But he seemed to be generally slow, and that's unlikely to be the tyres that would do that. One would have expected if something was going wrong with the tyres, he'd go quickly to start off with, and then of course slow down in due course when the tyres started to wear or went off, as they say. But didn't seem to be that.
2.8 seconds between Andrea De Cesaris in third place and Niki Lauda, who is second. and about the same gap between Keke Rosberg, the race leader, and Lauda. So there is, in round figures, 5 to 6 seconds covering the first 3 cars on lap 25 in this 70-lap Belgian Grand Prix, with, I remind you, Nigel Mansell out of the race, René Arnoux, who led at the beginning, out of the race in the Renault, Alain Prost out of the World Championship points position, Keke Rosberg leading in the first drive of the new Williams, another Patrick Head car. And there's a big crowd in Belgium as we look at Andrea de Cesaris in 3rd position. This very young driver who is a very introverted man, very shy, not at all anxious to speak to people or to be interviewed, and he's out of the car and disappears as soon as it stops in practice. There goes Lauda, here comes de Cesaris. They complete another lap and are therefore into their 26th lap. They're lapping, of course, well outside the lap record now. And that's Alboreto, or Henton. It's certainly one of the Tyrrells. It's Henton, Brian Henton, who got the 2nd Tyrrell drive after Slim Borgood has left the Tyrrell team. Henton drove for the Tyrrell team at San Marino, had trouble, failed to complete even a single lap, and he's done a lot better in this race. In fact, he was very well up in practice. Now, look down, there is the gap between the 1st and 2nd place men, and they are lapping in about 1 minute 22 seconds compared with the lap record of Jacques Laffite, which he put up in 1980. That's just under 118 miles an hour. So in today's terms, it is a comparatively leisurely pace, although let us not forget that with a long way in the race to go, the fuel load is still pretty heavy, and Keke Rosberg is extending his lead as Derek Warwick goes through in the Toleman. There is Lauda 2nd, De Cesaris 3rd, and as an aside, it's heartening that both the Toleman cars got through and into the race, Derek Warwick and his teammate Teo Fabi, and here are Patrese and Watson. Now, Patrese, number 2, is in 4th position. Watson is in 5th place, therefore. There is Elio De Angelis in the JPS and Michele Alboreto. And behind that is Derek Daly. So the order now, lap 27, it is still Rosberg leading, Lauda 2nd, De Cesaris 3rd, Patrese 4th, Watson 5th, Alboreto 6th, and Daly in 7th position. Jacques Laffite and Eddie Cheever, both in Talbot, and Jacques Laffite goes through and takes his American teammate, but his American teammate doesn't seem to like him very much.
Yes, he'd be battling away like goodness, didn't they?
This is the battle for 9th position, actually, with Jacques Laffite holding it at the present moment. And a good old traffic jam going down to the chicane. This left, right, left, very quick chicane, which they go through in 2nd gear, change up into 3rd. Rosberg leads then, after 27 laps, that is, and we are now on lap 28.
Seems most extraordinary that the TV people in their infinite wisdom don't appear to put a camera down at the chicane. The only shots we've had of it so far are from the helicopter. And that's a place where there's traditionally plenty of action. It's a good corner, so one wonders what's come over them.
Well, we see them accelerating away to the chicane. Now, what are we going to see next? We see Brian Henton. And Piquet goes through. There's the turbo. Jacques Laffite is coming up then. So we've got the prospect now of jolly Jacques Laffite, number 25 in the Talbot, with the wind in his sail, catching the world champion in only his 2nd drive in the Brabham BMW Turbo, and it looks as though Laffite is shaping up to try and take the Brazilian as they come down towards the Boulderberg, and that is where Alan Jones went off in 1981 and convincingly lost the race. Fortunately, they had a crane to get the car out of the way, and a very one-legged Allen hopped over the Armco with a scalded leg. There's the chicane. That's the aerial shot. Over the brow of the hill. Onto the tail Arman. And that's Brian Henton getting in the way of Nelson Piquet, from Piquet's point of view, with Laffite and Cheever 9th and 10th. So this is the 8th, 9th, 10th battle. And Laffite is through.
Yes, Henton managed to get completely in everybody's way there, as far as I could see, and I don't think that Piquet will be a happy man about that, because it cost him potentially the place, and he's got a bit boxed by Henton, who should have let them through earlier and really didn't drive in a very intelligent fashion at all, not using his mirrors intelligently, considering that he's been in the pits and is therefore not part of that battle.
This is the order then, as we watch the battle for 8th position between Piquet, Laffite and Cheever.
And Piquet seems to have repassed Laffite, who's putting us, they're really battling away, those three. Laffite putting a wheel on the grass. I would think that Piquet probably got past on the straight with the power of his turbo, going away from that hairpin.
Lap 29 out of 70. Keke Rosberg leads. Second, Lauda. Third, De Cesaris. Fourth, Patrese. Fifth, Watson. Sixth, Alboreto. Seventh is Daly. In 8th position is Nelson Piquet. And let us now very quickly consider the World Championship situation as that good old scrap goes down towards the chicane. Alain Prost, who leads the World Championship, is not in the points position at the moment. Niki Lauda, who is second in the championship, is second in the race. Michele Alboreto, third in the championship, sixth in the race. And Didier Pironi, who is equal in the championship, didn't start. And Keke Rosberg, who is fifth, is in the lead. There he goes, fifth in the World Championship, in the lead in the race, and he is on lap 30 out of 70.
Boxenstopp von Mauro Baldi mit dem Eros. Eros ist das Team, das voriges Jahr durch diesen Startunfall getroffen wurde. Dave Luckett, Chefmechaniker, trotzdem hier wieder an der Box. So, und jetzt wird's dramatisch. Nelson Piquet, der Weltmeister, in der Box gewesen. Bei Williams werden Reifen bereitgehalten. Interessanterweise, dass Piquet jetzt bei den Boxen durchgefahren ist, eigentlich durchgestartet ist. Er ist zwar hereingekommen, hat sich möglicherweise im letzten Moment noch überlegt und ist einfach weitergefahren. Was dafür der Grund war, kann ich Ihnen im Augenblick nicht sagen. Wir können höchstens darüber raten. Habe ich schon lange nicht mehr gesehen bei einem Grand Prix. 9,283 Sekunden, hier haben Sie genau den Rückstand zwischen Rosberg und Lauda, der in dieser Runde bereits angewachsen ist, und zwar auf 11,8 Sekunden. Und Niki Lauda hat seinen zweiten Platz verloren und ist von Andrea De Cesaris überholt worden. 30. Runde, knapp vor halber Distanz im Grand Prix von Belgien in Zolder. Der neue Zweite ist Andrea De Cesaris mit dem Alfa Romeo und Dritter ist jetzt Niki Lauda. Hier haben Sie ihn im Bild. Wir müssen jetzt die nächsten Runden abwarten und auf die Stoppuhr schauen, ob Niki Lauda seinen Rückstand auf Rosberg und De Cesaris jetzt annähernd beibehält oder ob er weiter zurückfällt oder ob er möglicherweise gezwungen wird, an die Box zu kommen. Auch bei McLaren hat man mittlerweile die Reifen zurechtgelegt, um blitzschnell Reifen wechseln zu können. Ich habe Lauda noch vom Start gefragt, glaubst du nicht, dass es ein bisschen gefährlich ist heute? Es ist relativ schön warm, nicht heiß, aber schönes warmes Wetter. Also es ist nicht ein bisschen ein großes, riesiges mit den weichen Reifen zu fahren. Und Lauda hat gesagt, naja, um 3:30 wird es hoffentlich ein bisschen kühler sein, hoffentlich kommt eine Wolke drüber. Ich habe nicht viele Wolken gesehen, seither eigentlich gar keine, und könnte sein, dass sich Lauda mit den Reifen vielleicht ein bisschen verspekuliert hat. Aber das ist im Augenblick nur eine Vermutung. Es ist sehr gefährlich, wenn immer der Sand auf die Piste geschoben wird, weil die Strecke dadurch rutschiger wird.
Welcome back to the Belgian Grand Prix. Rosberg still leading, but a change in second place. De Cesaris has passed Niki Lauda and seems to be pulling away. Lauda seems to be slowing slightly, so whether it's tyres or mechanical problems, we yet don't know. Patrese is still in there in fourth place with Watson still very close behind, and I still maintain it'll be a matter of time before Watson will get past Patrese. The retirements up to date have been Giacomelli, Salazar, Arnoux and Mansell. So with that, we return back to Zolder, to Murray Walker and James Hunt.
And this could be a symptom of the tyres getting a little bit worn or getting a little bit too hot, or something like that. John Watson has moved up into 4th place behind his teammate Lauda.
Which means that Michele Alboreto has slipped down the field. Attrition is taking its toll now. There is the second place man, new second place man in the V12 Alfa Romeo, having left last year's team. Andrea De Cesaris was with the McLaren team last year. Now he's with Alfa. There is Niki Lauda sliding the car through the chicane, and it looks rather less than 2.4 seconds. Indeed it is. It's just two seconds now, but so Niki Lauda has gained some of the gap. Incidentally, on the right-hand side of your picture, you see Salazar's car and Giacomelli's car, which you remember went out on the first lap, as De Angelis goes through. That was Chico Serra in the Fittipaldi car, and now we're looking through the chicane at Mark Surer went through there, and the producer is obviously waiting for, and that was Derek Warwick going off. He wasn't waiting for that, but Derek Warwick in the Tolman or Farby going into the pits. There's 3 chicanes on this circuit, and that is the one at the end of the straight and into the pits. And here is Nelson Piquet about to be lapped, what ignominy, by the Williams as they go through the chicane. Well, the World Championship, the World Champion, is really having a very hard 1982. He has now been lapped. There goes Keke Rosberg through. Lapped is Nelson Piquet. We are now on lap 33, coming up to the half-distance lap. Keke Rosberg goes through. Now you can get a good look at the new Williams and compare it in your mind's eye, those of you who know what the FW07 looked like with the new car. Keke Rosberg, 33 years old, very accomplished businessman as well as racing driver, flies his own aeroplane, has several homes in Europe and America. But racing is very much his first love. This is lap 34 that we are now on. You are looking at Keke Rosberg, the race leader. If he stays in this position for the rest of this race, we're going to have had a new World Championship Grand Prix winner, because that would be Rosberg's first win. Now he's coming up to Jean-Pierre Jarier in the Osella to lap him. French driver, Italian car, which hasn't done at all well this season, although marginally better than he did last season. There goes Jarier, there's Rosberg into the straight. Another lap completed for Keke Rosberg, and on lap 34 the order is Rosberg first, De Cesaris second, Lauda third, Watson fourth, in 5th position it is Patrese, in 6th position it is Daly. So both the Williams and both the McLaren cars are in the top 6. Keke Rosberg. Well, Jarier seems to be determined to keep Rosberg behind him. Keke, of course, has actually got quite a lot of time to get past him, although he won't want to waste too much of it, because Rosberg has now got a good lead over Andrea De Cesaris, and he's passed Jarier. So now Jean-Pierre Jarier is going to have to be passed by Andrea De Cesaris, and that could be quite exciting too. It was about this time in the Long Beach race when Andrea De Cesaris lost his concentration. And he lost his concentration because he thought he saw the back of a car on fire, which is not an unreasonable reason for losing concentration. And he went into the wall. Let's hope nothing like that happens here. Rosberg leads. Jarier has been lapped. And Rosberg is coming up now to take the march of Raul Barcel, the Brazilian, who has gone from Formula 4 to Formula 1 in 2 years. That's 35.
just see Rosberg going past Bessel again. Straightforward thing. Bessel was aware that he was there, just let him through, moved over quite correctly, let him get on with his winning way.
This is the long right-hander up to the canal turn. Fifth gear, absolutely flat in today's Grand Prix cars, which are going faster and faster now that the skirts are back. You will remember that there was an enormous contention last year over these skirts that enabled downforce to be maximised and the cars to get the most fantastic grip on the ground. And in 1980 they were sliding skirts, 1981 they were banned, and that is Brian Henton pulling off. Brian Henton in the Candy Tyrrell number 4, the unfortunate Englishman who seems to be as unlucky in his way as René Arnoux is. And it's a smoky old motor car, and let's hope that that's not fire. I wasn't vastly impressed with the Belgian marshals when I was watching in practice. A lot of marshals, not many flags, and a lot of interest in watching the race and not much interest in doing their job. They seem to be getting down there now, and one of them I see has got a fire extinguisher. Perhaps I'm maligning them. We have missed Andrea De Cesaris on our chart. Where is it now? Let's hope. There's confirmation. Niki Lauda is back in second position. Watson is up to third. Patrese to fourth. Daly to fifth. Cheever to sixth. That means to say that the two McLaren cars are second and third. The Williams cars are first and fifth. There is one turbo in the first six, and it is that of Riccardo Patrese. And Eddie Cheever, for the first time in 1982, is in the points in a Talbot, unlike the Tyrrell which he drove last year. Well, I wonder what could have happened to Andrea De Cesaris. I was hypothesising a moment ago that he may lose concentration at about this time of the race, but that is a rather uncharitable thought, and it's because we got so used to De Cesaris going off last year. I'm a little mystified as to why we haven't seen him somewhere. I imagine that if the producer had spotted him, we would have had a shot, but for whatever reason, Andrea De Cesaris, with his teammate Bruno Giacomelli out before the race had hardly even started, is definitely out of the first six. And the positions, I say again, on lap 38 out of 70 is this man, Keke Rosberg, leading by a country mile, metaphorically speaking now. And he really has the problem now only of maintaining his concentration, not losing it, stroking the car home to win his first Grand Prix. But there is almost as far to go as has gone already. Observe the very, very wide track. See how far the wheels of the car are set apart. Very squat and purposeful looking motor car with the very latest of the unbelievably successful Ford Cosworth V8 engines in it, and if a car with that engine wins today, it will be the 146th Grand Prix win, and therefore by far the most successful engine in the history of Grand Prix racing. Keke Rosberg completes his 30th lap. Look down the field to see who the second place man is, and it should of course be the red and white McLaren of Niki Lauda. What an enormous lead Rosberg has. An empty track, that's a march. There is Lauda, and another march behind him. Raoul Boesel is in front and Jochen Maas is behind, and that is the second place man, Niki Lauda from Hof near Salzburg. World champion in 1975, world champion in 1977, both years in a Ferrari. Then he drove for Brabham, became thoroughly disillusioned with racing in 1979, calmly stepped out of the then brand new Brabham Ford Cosworth car at Montreal and said, that's enough, I've finished, and was out of racing for 2 years. What a comeback.
It's really a shame that we've got rather a processional race now. The leaders have all spread out. There's gaps between each of the first 6 cars, and really nothing very much going on at all, other than the 4 drivers out there who are working very hard. And now, of course, starting to get tired. It's still a mystery to us what's happened to De Cesaris, which is rather a shame. We'd like to know, but there was no shot of him in the pits, which makes me suspect that he would have stopped on the circuit somewhere, and we haven't seen him in the pits. So I imagine either he's broken down or one hesitates to say it, or there's also the strong possibility that he might have gone off the road somewhere, as has traditionally been his wont. But for his sake, we sincerely hope that that's not the case.
Well, John Watson is now within sight of Niki Lauda, and as he's coming up to take Raoul Bussell. That's John Watson, number 7, last year's British Grand Prix winner. That was the first time that the McLaren MP4 car had won, and a very welcome return to the top of the rostrum for John Watson. Well, he's in 3rd position. There's a replay of him going through on the inside at the end of the straight and taking the Brazilian driver. Now accelerates away down to the chicane, and there's Lauda disappearing. Watson going towards the chicane, and it will be very interesting to see what happens if, in a few laps' time, John Watson, who is in 3rd position on lap 40 out of 70, catches his teammate, that man, number 8, Niki Lauda. Keke Rosberg still leads. Lauda is 2nd with De Cesaris missing. Watson 3rd. Patrese in the Turbo Brabham BMW 4th. In 5th position, number 5, Derek Daly. And in 6th position, still Eddie Cheever.
Yes, if Watson does catch Lauda, which he certainly appears that he's going to do on his present rate of progress, we could get an interesting situation. I don't know what, if any, standing orders they have from the team about being in a line astern situation, but of course what the team will have to assess and Watson would have to assess is if for any reason they think he is capable of catching Rosberg, then of course they've got to persuade Lauda to let him past immediately, so as not to halt his progress towards Rosberg. So what we'll try and do is see if he is in fact closing on Rosberg as well.
In der 40. Runde, 30 Runden noch bis zur Zielflagge im Grand Prix von Belgien. Rosberg, Lauda, Watson, Patrese, Daly, Cheever in den Punkterängen. Dann Laffite 7. eine Runde Rückstand. Maas, De Angelis, Piquet, Serra, Prost und Zura. 2 Runden Bösel, 3 Runden Charrier. Auch Sie zu Hause werden sich vielleicht mittlerweile gefragt haben, was ist eigentlich mit den Renault Turbos los? Warum können René Arnoux und Alain Prost im Augenblick keine Rennen gewinnen? René Arnoux ist zu mir heraufgekommen. Merci. Thank you very much for coming. What happens to your car? Was ist passiert? Qu'est-ce que s'est passé à toi, René?
J'ai cassé un axe de commande de papillon de turbo, ce qui m'a contraint à l'abandon puisque l'accélérateur n'accélérait plus du tout.
Also ein Schaden am Gasgestänge, der Motor hat einfach nicht gearbeitet können, sagt René Arnoux. Er kann im Augenblick offenbar keinen Grand Prix gewinnen, immer in Führung, zuletzt in Imola und immer wieder ein solches Pech. Au moment tu ne peux pas gagner un Grand Prix, tu étais en tête ici, tu étais en tête à Imola.
C'est sûr, c'est sûr, c'est de la malchance, mais c'est un sport mécanique, faut l'accepter, mais maintenant ça commence à durer un peu pour moi. Et je suis déçu bien sûr de ne pas avoir gagné de course depuis le début de la saison. Je sais que je vais en gagner, mais je suis surtout très déçu de d'avoir perdu à Imola et perdu ici, parce que ma voiture allait vraiment très bien et je pense que je pouvais gagner la course et je perds encore 9 points au championnat du monde, ce qui coûte très cher dans le bilan.
René Arnoux hat sich, ich darf Sie vielleicht übersetzen, falls Sie ihn auf Französisch nicht so gut verstanden haben.
Welcome back to the Belgian Grand Prix. Placings are Rosberg, Lauda, Watson, Patrese and Daly. Interesting to note that Piquet's engine sounds to be running quite rough, and I think it will only be a matter of time before he retires. Daly's moved up into 5th position, as I stated before, which is a tremendous indictment for Patrick Head, the engineer. We have one FW8 Williams leading the race and Daly in 5th position. It's the first time out for both these new cars, and I think they're doing a wonderful job. We return you now back to Murray and James Hunt.
Rosberg's now looking very comfortable out in front. He's got a clear track, a clear back view with nobody immediately behind him, and he must now be thinking of just keeping everything nice and steady. His lead's the best, getting on for 20 seconds now. He must be looking just to keep everything steady, the usual thing, shore up the position, make no mistakes, keep his concentration going, and try and preserve both the wear on himself physically and the wear on the tires and everything else on the car.
Chicane, it's getting a bit... that is significant. John Watson fastest, 1 minute 20.56, which actually breaks the lap record. So we have a new lap record, albeit some 5 seconds slower than the fastest lap put up in practice by Alain Prost in the turbocharged Renault. And there he is, disappearing away from us. So John Watson quickest, and about 2.5 seconds between Lauda and Watson. Watson is the fastest man on the circuit at the present moment. It is possible, and I'm conjecturing again, that Niki Lauda is conserving his tyres, in which case, considering John Watson has the same make of tyre on his car, there is a rather surprising situation there, because I can see no reason why Lauda's tyres should have gone off any more than Watson. There is Lauda, second, and you saw Watson behind him.
I think with his teammate right behind him, he'd have to be very careful that wouldn't be preserving his tyres too hard. I think he'd be really giving it a go, and obviously maybe that he didn't preserve them enough at the beginning of the race, and they've worn a little bit harder or faster than Watson's. But Watson's looked good in this race throughout. Remember in the opening laps we spotted him making good progress early on, and of course it takes a while to get through the field, and he's always looked a bit sharper.
You join us on lap 45 of this brightly sunlit, dry Belgian Grand Prix, where the order is still Keke Rosberg in the lead. Niki Lauda is second, John Watson is third, Riccardo Patrese is fourth, Derek Daly is fifth, and Eddie Cheever is in sixth position. But there have been a lot of changes since then. Niki Lauda actually lost his second place to Andrea De Cesaris, who was third when you left us on lap 13. De Cesaris held that position for a long time, but then mysteriously disappeared. And look at this now, John Watson in third place is right up with Niki Lauda, who is second.
Yes, and John Watson is undoubtedly the man of the race at the moment. He's come from quite a long way back. He's just about caught his teammate Niki Lauda, but more important than that, he is in fact closing, albeit slowly, on Keke Rosberg, who is in the lead. And this is the important thing, because we're into a teammate situation, and whatever their standing orders are, he's now 19 seconds behind Rosberg, but he was 23 seconds behind only about 4 or 5 laps ago, so he's catching Rosberg quite fast. Now, Rosberg may not as yet know if his team have been giving him signals only to Lauda, and therefore may be taking it easy in the lead. So first of all, we've got to make sure that Lauda is informed by his team to let Watson through, because of the possibility of Watson winning the race. So there can be no question of number 1 or number 2 here, I wouldn't have thought. And then, of course, it's a question of whether Rosberg can actually respond to this terrific charge being put on by John Watson.
And to bring you fully up to date, as Watson visibly gains on Niki Lauda, let me quickly establish that Alain Prost, who was 6th when you left us, has slipped right down the field and is out of the World Championship point situation. And look at this, Watson is now up and coming to try to take Niki Lauda, who is in second position. This is the 46th lap race in this 70-lap race. John Watson, I remind you, won the British Grand Prix in this same type of car last year. Down to the chicane, and we could very soon be seeing, as Watson is now right up into Lauda's slipstream, a new second-place man.
Yes, I think Watson will have a go now, but Lauda didn't help him through previously when he showed him his nose, but there he goes. Nicky doesn't fight it, and John Watson straight through into second place, and now comes the interesting bit. Here's a bit of a replay, which we missed. We had a bit of a mess up there. Belgian television are really not doing us very proud today with their service, but...
Well, Watson through and clearly pulling away from Niki Lauda. Now we must watch very carefully to see whether the gap between Keke Rosberg, the race leader, who has been in this situation since lap 1, diminishes. So, lap 47, and Keke Rosberg in the Williams leads John Watson. There he is in second place, and Niki Lauda in third, and there's still a long way to go. And off there, that, never mind who that was, because this is where the excitement of the race is. And Niki Lauda has very clearly decided to give John Watson best, so he's obviously in some sort of trouble. And that caption, of course, is now wrong, with Watson up into second place. Patrese is still fourth, Daly fifth, and Cheever sixth. And as I have said before, this means that both the McLaren cars and both the Williams cars are in the top 6. John Watson, number 7, lives in London, and Bognor won 2 Grand Prix in his long career. He's one of the most experienced men in this race, because this is, believe it or not, his 126th Grand Prix. This Ulster man, who's got one of the Arrows cars in front of him to lap. Down to the chicane. Now, I hope they will let us see Rosberg and then Watson going through so that we can take the gap between them. There's the Brabham BMW. 19 seconds is the answer. That is the gap that we've got to watch.
Yes, it does look as if Rosberg has steadied that gap, whereas it was closing before. I think he must have got the message from the pits that Watson was coming through and closing on him, and I think, as I surmised earlier, he's been able to step up the pace. He was probably operating his speed to Lauda behind him, who wasn't making any impression. And but we'll keep a careful eye on that gap, because it may just be that Watson can still keep closing. Rosberg looking a little bit twitchy going into that right-hander there. He didn't seem to get quite as much bite at the front, and it may well be that the tyres are getting a little bit worn now on everybody's cars and are beginning to struggle, but probably not for John Watson, because he has recently, in the last 7 or 8 laps, put up the fastest lap of the race so far.
What an incredible comeback John Watson has made in the last 2 years, because there was a danger of him losing his job before last year with the McLaren team, and he responded to that. As we look at Keke Rosberg in the lead, Watson responded by finishing 3rd in Spain, 2nd in France. He won in Britain, 2nd in Canada, 6th in the World Championship. And this year, he's been doing extremely well, because in Brazil, on the revised positions after the disqualifications, John Watson finished in 2nd place, and he's 5th equal in the championship with Derek Daly at the present moment. There is the race leader, Rosberg. Now, we're into lap 49, lap 50 now. That's 5/7 distance. And I'm desperately watching in the hope that we will be able to see Rosberg and then the 2nd place man, John Watson, going through the same point, so that I can give you the gap in time between them and see how it compares with that 19 seconds. But on lap 50, it is Rosberg leading, Watson 2nd, Lauda 3rd, Patrese 4th, Daly in 5th position, Cheever in 6th place, Jacques Laffite in 7th place, and the leader, Keke Rosberg, has lapped everybody up to Jacques Laffite, who is 7th, followed by the lapped Elio De Angelis in 8th position, and in 9th position is Jochen in the march. Lap 50. Now there is Laffite, followed by Rosberg. Laffite in 7th place in the V12 Talbot, the car which he says is too old, too slow, too heavy. And Rosberg is through. We didn't see it, but Rosberg has passed him at the chicane entry to the finishing straight, the Jackie X chicane. And Rosberg is now into his 51st lap. I look at the tyres, they look good. Rosberg is taking the same line all the way round. This very determined Finnish driver.
Yes, he does seem to be well in command. He seems so far from following of the gap to have responded very much to Watson's little charge. As he came through, he's lifted up his own speed a bit, and the gap is still hovering around the 19-second mark. So Rosberg has met the challenge very easily, and it doesn't augur well for us to get an exciting grandstand finish, I'm afraid, at the moment.
Keke Rosberg, number 6 that we're looking at now, is of course the man who took the seat in the Wolf team that James Hunt vacated. So maybe, James, you could have been leading the Belgian Grand Prix if you'd stayed on.
Well, that's a fairly abstruse bit of rationale, Murray, but I'm much happier sitting here watching it. No, Keke's a very good driver. That was his first break in Formula 1. He did an excellent job in an extremely bad car in the Wolf team. There he's just going past a tail ender. It was a very poor car indeed, which was one reason that I got out halfway through the season. He did a competent job, brought it home very well indeed, and thoroughly deserved the break that he got when Alan Jones retired at the end of last year, and he was brought into the Williams team and has surprised nobody that knew a lot about racing, in that he's up front and winning. He's in probably the best car in the business. It was Patrick Head designed car, and he's well competent to deliver the best performance from it.
This looks like another tour de force for the quite incredible Williams team, who produce the most reliable motor cars in Grand Prix racing. And there is Frank Williams and Peter Collins with the clipboard, the team manager, as Riccardo Patrese goes through. Reutemann last year actually over a couple of seasons did 15 consecutive races and finished in the World Championship points, a quite unparalleled achievement in his Williams. Alan Jones, of course, was world champion in 1981, won his last race at Caesar's Palace at Las Vegas, all thanks not only to the driving brilliance of Reutemann and Jones, and we're looking, by the way, at Eddie Cheever, who is in 6th position in the Tour, but also to the reliability of the Williams, which seems to be showing up again, with not only Keke Rosberg in the lead, but with Derek Daly, number 5, in 5th position. Derek Daly in his first race in the Williams, so there's 3 firsts, as it were, at the present moment. 2 first appearances of the 08 Williams cars, and a first appearance of Derek Daly in that car. And the Irishman has at last got the break that he has so richly deserved for so long. And there he is. That is Derek Daly. That was Derek Daly. Jacques Laffite, Eddie Cheever. Well, there is Daly pulling away from Mark Sura and from Eddie Cheever.
Well, John Watson has now made a bit of an impression on the gap to Keke Rosberg, and he's reduced it down to 16 seconds. However, I suspect that he's not reducing it quite fast enough. We've got 17-18 laps to go, so he's really got to be hauling Rosberg in at about a second a lap, and that he isn't doing yet.
Well, it's a long way from being over as far as Keke Rosberg is concerned, as Eddie Cheever comes up to take Mark Sura. Mark Sura, incidentally, in the orange car there, the Arrows, driving his first Grand Prix since South Africa, when he broke both his ankles, as he did in last year's South African Grand Prix. And I would imagine that Mark is dreading next year's Kyle Army at the rate that he's destroying himself in South Africa. But he's quite fit again now, finds it easier to drive than to walk. And we're looking down on a fairly empty circuit, but it gives you a good idea of what Zolder is like. And that is a Brabham BMW, and it must therefore be Patrese's car.
I think I saw Patrese walking away, yes, the white helmet there.
Oh.
That looks like it's in the fencing rather than the breakdown. It's rather hard to see from this angle, but it does look Do we...
Well, this is lap 54, and with Patrese, number 2, out of the running, that means
somebody else went off then. Somebody speaking. That was the other Brabham.
That's Piquet. Well, the Brabhams are really hitting trouble on this lap. Piquet not in the World Championship points running, of course, but with Patrese out of the running, that means to say that Derek Daly, in his first race in the Williams, goes up to 4th place.
Well, thinking about that, they can't have been too far from piling into each other. Piquet didn't miss Patrese's parked car by very much at all, and that would have been a somewhat spectacular way for the two teams to finish in separate accidents parked against each other. But anyway, Piquet went down the grass, made lots of fuss and bother, but managed to get it going again.
Lap 54. Keke Rosberg is leading John Watson by 16 seconds. Niki Lauda is in 3rd position. Derek Daly comes up to 4th place. Eddie Cheever is in 5th position.
BMW Turbotriebwerk seit Kyalami nicht gearbeitet hat. Man hat erst, ob Sie es glauben oder nicht, vor 3 Wochen begonnen, den Unfallschaden von Piquet in Kyalami, und das war immerhin Ende Jänner, noch vor der Skiweltmeisterschaft in Schladming. Man hat erst vor 3 Wochen begonnen, diese Unfallschäden zu reparieren. Wie weit Brabham mit dem BMW Turbo jetzt schon sein könnte, hätte man sich rechtzeitig um eine Weiterentwicklung des Chassis gekümmert, das kann ich Ihnen getrost selber überlassen zu urteilen. Rückstand von Lauda, 32 Sekunden auf Rosberg und 16 Sekunden auf Watson, aber 26 Sekunden Vorsprung auf Derek Daly. Zu fahren noch 15 Runden. Das heißt, Lauda könnte theoretisch ruhig 1,7, 1,8 Sekunden pro Runde nachlassen und immer noch den 3. Platz behalten vor Derek Daly. Außer Daly sollte jetzt ungewöhnlich schnell werden, aber das wage ich zu bezweifeln. Daly 4., Cheever 5. und dann Laffite, De Angelis, Maas, Prost, Piquet, Serra, Sura und Bösel. Nach dem Ausfall von Patrese nur noch 13 im Rennen. Vielleicht fährt ein Brabham BMW Turbo heute zum ersten Mal bis ins Ziel. Nur 2 Turbos noch im Rennen. Alain Prost mit dem Renault 9. Nelson Piquet mit dem Brabham BMW 11. Rosberg überrundet Jochen Maas. Boxenstopp von Jacques Laffite. Eine Runde Rückstand, 6. Platz und jetzt...
With 13 laps to go, we have Rosberg leading, Watson moved up into 2nd, Lauda 3rd, Daly 4th, and Eddie Cheever in 5th position for the Talbot Ligier team. The retirements up to date have been Giacomelli, Salazar, Arnoux, Mansell, Henton and De Cesaris. Patrese has just spun out, as you saw, and nearly joined by his teammate Piquet, who I think was having a good look at Patrese's crash and nearly went off himself. I think the situation now is almost a fait accompli. I think that barring any mechanical problems, Rosberg is going to win his first Grand Prix, and I sincerely hope so. It'll be a fantastic debut for the new Williams. We now return you back to Murray and James.
Miserable about the motor car, extremely unhappy because he has won several Grand Prix in what was the Ligier and is now the Talbot, as we look down the absolutely clear finishing straight with the knowledge that Keke Rosberg, the race leader, is on lap 57, still followed by John Watson in 2nd place with a 16-second gap between them. Niki Lauda is still 3rd, Daly is still 4th, Cheever is still 5th, and there was Cheever, and there is Nelson Piquet, who has regained the circuit. This is Piquet, the world champion, and he once again is going to score no points in the 5th Grand Prix of 1982. Daly and Cheever. Well, this is interesting because now Eddie Cheever in the Talbot is right with Derek Daly, and we could be seeing a change for 5th position. There it is. There's the battle between the Williams and the Talbot. The Williams on the right in 5th place, driven by Irishman Derek Daly. Then the Italo-American driver in the red and white helmet, Eddie Cheever, in the Talbot. This is the battle for 5th position. It is the only battle of any significance on the circuit, and they're coming up to lap Chico Serra, who just got into the race.
Well, the gap between the 1st and 2nd place is now down to 12 seconds with 13 laps to go. So Watson is just about on schedule at reducing the gap a second a lap. So it very much depends whether this is a ploy, as it were, by Keke Rosberg just to slow down and to win by a couple of seconds in the end, or whether Watson's car's in better condition, his tyres are working better, because he's certainly driven a marvellous race and is quite comfortably the leading protagonist on the circuit. And lots of fun and games there as they go past the back marker, with Cheever not being able to take advantage of the situation, but breathing right down Daly's neck, having a go, and he's caught Daly up from a little way behind, and he's getting quicker, so he's going to be trying hard to get round him.
Yes, V12 Talbot versus V8 Williams. The Williams still leads. Derek Daly, of course, and very naturally determined to exploit this wonderful opportunity that he has been given by Frank Williams to complete the season in the Williams car, and hopefully to go on and drive it next year, because this has to be the plum drive that Derek Daly has been trying for. In 4th position, chased by 5th place man Eddie Cheever in the blue Talbot, and the new 6th place man Elio De Angelis has of course been lapped by the race leader Keke Rosberg, and we are on lap 59. Daly, Cheever, 4th and 5th, completing the lap. 58 laps completed by those two. Williams leads, McLaren 2nd, McLaren 3rd, Williams in 4th place, Talbot in 5th place. Those, of course, being the cars, the drivers here. 4th and 5th, still Derek Daly and Eddie Cheever. And Eddie Cheever, number 25, is 25 years old and has no less than 50 Formula 2 races behind him. And I can tell you that there is the prospect of a battle developing for the lead before this race is over, because the gap between Keke Rosberg and John Watson, fighting for 1st position, is down to 10 seconds, and they are on lap 60. And it's a 70-lap race, so you can draw your own conclusions from that. And still, we look at Derek Daly, followed by Eddie Cheever. Now watch them come through the chicane and then into the straight to complete another lap, and this will be the end of their 60th lap. Well, we are wisely staying with this, but all the time, while I talk to you and while you watch this picture, remember that John Watson is remorselessly chewing away at the lead that Keke Rosberg has got. Theoretically, it is at a rate which could enable him just to win the race, but who knows how much Rosberg has got in reserve and how much he is sandbagging. Well, certainly for sure that neither of these two are.
No, Cheever's a little bit closer this time. He's pulled out to have a look as he goes out of sight there, but he doesn't seem to be really getting into position, and Watson's just gone by now, only 8 seconds behind Rosberg, so he's catching. Now, if Rosberg's going to respond to this charge, he better respond pretty soon. Otherwise, we've got to assume that he's doing the best that he can, and that Watson is genuinely catching him. But it's going to be very marginal, because, of course, the old problem comes up. It's one thing catching him, it's another thing to pass him, and he's only going to have a lap or two to do it in at the present rate of progress. Meanwhile, Cheever has got his hands full trying to get past Daly, who's a pretty hard, competent driver, and won't make it easy for Cheever to pass. And at the moment, Cheever's really looks a bit bereft of ideas to find a way round.
Well, they've completed their 60th lap, which means, of course, that they and the leaders are on their 61st, as we see Derek Warwick in the Tolman come down towards us. And there is Nelson Piquet, the world champion, and that is down there is Derek Daly. So clearly, Cheever has harried him off the course. I'm not suggesting for one moment that he pushed him off, but Derek Daly was absolutely at 10 tenths, no doubt about that. And he has lost the car at a point I can't identify in that close picture as Watson goes through. Now, Watson, therefore, is on his 62nd lap, and we're waiting for the next car, which should be Niki Lauda. So there is only one Williams left in the race, and it's that one. That is Keke Rosberg, the race leader on lap 62 out of 70. 7 seconds only is the gap, and very soon John Watson will be able, on some parts of the course, to see the man that he's got to catch. And there is a bitterly disappointed Derek Daly, helmet off, walking home, to explain to Frank Williams and Patrick Head what went wrong. I don't think I would like to be part of that interview very much, but there is a man for whom, touch wood, nothing has gone wrong in this race. The race leader, and that is Keke Rosberg, and that means that up into 6th position now comes Jochen Maas, well lapped, of course, but nevertheless in with a World Championship point, and he is behind the 5th place man Elio De Angelis, the 4th place man Cheever, the 3rd place man Lauda, the 2nd place man Watson, and that man, the leader, Keke Rosberg, who is on his 62nd lap.
Viele andere Grand Prix-Fahrer in Monte Carlo, hat lange in Heidelberg gelebt, ist ja früher, das habe ich Ihnen glaube ich schon erzählt, für den Österreicher Kurt Bergmann Formel V-Rennen gefahren. Erstes Rennen glaube ich 1974. Außerdem hat Keke Rosberg Häuser auf Ibiza, in England, sammelt nicht nur luxuriöse Wohnungen und Häuser, sondern auch Luxusautos. Hat sich kürzlich einen Ferrari 375 GTB gekauft, hat jetzt einen silbernen Mercedes, den gleichen Wagen wie Niki Lauda, hat sehr, sehr viele Autos, hat auch einige Rennautos gekauft, die ja eine relativ gute Wertanlage darstellen. Rosberg fährt heute seinen 40. Grand Prix und wird, wenn es so weitergeht, zum ersten Mal gewinnen. Erster Grand Prix für Keke Rosberg, Kyalami 1978, damals mit dem Theodore. Rosberg und die ehemalige Skirennläuferin Divina Gallica, kennen Sie vielleicht noch, 8 Runden noch, haben sich damals am Steuer dieses Wagens abgelöst. Große Chance für Rosberg war zunächst einmal ein privater Wolf. Und dann kam es zum Zusammenschluss des Wolf-Teams mit Fittipaldi. Ja, und dann haben eigentlich die vielen Nicht-Qualifikationen für Keke Rosberg begonnen. Erstaunlich, wie er zu Williams gekommen ist. Williams hat eine Liste von 8 Fahrern im vergangenen Winter. Das ist Jochen Maas. Schaut aus, als würde er bewusst und absichtlich jetzt ausrollen. Maas lag an der 6. Stelle, also innerhalb der Weltmeisterschaftspunkteränge. Motorschaden offenbar, Sie haben gesehen, der rauchende March. Damit ist dieses so unglücklich verlaufene Wochenende für den deutschen Maas endgültig vorbei, lag an 6. Stelle und ist ausgeschieden, und damit wird allein Prost doch noch einen Weltmeisterschaftspunkt holen, denn Prost, 2 Runden Rückstand, ist jetzt 6.
Out of the chicane of the...
Welcome back, and there's an interesting situation developing with John Watson slowly catching Keke Rosberg, who is still leading the Belgian Grand Prix. Lauda is still in 3rd place, Cheever's moved up to 4th with the demise of Derek Daly, and De Angelis is now in 5th place. I return you back.
There are now 6 laps to go, and John Watson is within 6 seconds of Keke Rosberg, who's just gone through. Now, the next man into our shot should be, and it is, John Watson in 2nd place, ahead of his teammate Niki Lauda. And therefore, at the rate Watson is catching Rosberg, he could still win the Belgian Grand Prix. Now, Rosberg has got to catch and take these tail-enders with those 6 laps to go. And the 2 tail-enders include 8 seconds is the gap at that point, according to that timing, but we make it much closer than that. 6 seconds at the end of the lap.
Yes, that'll be a couple of laps old. They're not very quick with flashing that information up. No, we just timed it at 6, and I think Rosberg's responded a little bit in that the gap isn't coming down quite as fast, so he may yet fend Watson off. It's going to be a very close run thing, but Watson's certainly driving an absolutely magnificent race, and it's really heartening to see him having such a good Grand Prix, because it's been a pretty bad period with McLarens. He stuck with them, they stuck with him, but things were quite miserable in the McLaren team for a couple of years, and it's now everything's come back. Niki Lauda's arrival has rejuvenated it, and the response has been magnificent in Watson. There he goes.
Less than 4 seconds. I timed it there, and John Watson is really gaining on Keke Rosberg. Rosberg was undoubtedly held up, getting past Chico Serra. Now he's got to get past Nelson Piquet, but by the same token, John Watson has got to get past Chico Serra. There is Serra, there is Watson. We are on lap 66 in this 70-lap race.
Rosberg's looking very tired. I think I could see his head lolling about a little bit there, which won't help. He's got the turbo in front of him. He's not letting him through with Piquet, or wasn't there. So it's all coming to a bit of a fraught finish for Rosberg, because I would think he would be I'd expect him to be very tired by now on this pretty demanding circuit.
4.5 laps to go. There is Watson coming up to Serra. Is Serra going to let him through?
The lucky thing for Watson is that he's got the straight in front of him as he caught Serra, so he's gone straight past him anyway. So that worked out very well for John.
John Watson, his 126th Grand Prix. He has 2 Grand Prix victories behind him. Keke Rosberg, that we are looking at, has none. Now I won't say we don't need a stopwatch, because we certainly do, but it is for sure that John Watson can see Keke Rosberg, and that he knows who he is catching, and that if he can catch and pass him, and look how much closer he is to him now, he will win the Belgian Grand Prix. Lap 66.
Yes, let's hope. He should be all right with Piquet for lapping him, because Piquet is a very experienced driver and will therefore understand and know the situation that's going on. He will have spotted that he's dealing with the battle for the lead, so hopefully he'll get out of the way and let Watson through.
2.92 seconds is the gap, and they go into lap 67. And John Watson, remember, has caught and passed his teammate Niki Lauda, and they are equal #1 drivers. He is now right up with Keke Rosberg, and it was 2.92 seconds when they started this lap. We will be able to watch them and give you the gap, but for sure it's going to be visual very soon.
Yes, I think it's visual already. Watson's Piquet was good. He let Watson right through. There you are. That's Rosberg just in front down the straight. So it's all down to the last charge for the line.
Lap 67, Rosberg leads, Watson gaining, Lauda is in 3rd position. In 4th place it is Eddie Cheever. In 5th place it is Elio De Angelis. In 6th position, Nelson Piquet. 3 laps behind, but still in with a World Championship point, and that would be his first of 1982. Here's the leader. Rosberg, Watson, 2.5 seconds. Watson has taken nearly half a second out of Rosberg's lead since I last timed them. This is lap 67, coming up to the end of it. 80-lap race. The leaders, 1st and 2nd together, long way ahead of Niki Lauda, 3rd, Eddie Cheever 4th, Elio De Angelis 5th, Nelson Piquet in 6th position. And in 7th place, incidentally, is Chico Serra, the man that they have just lapped. I should think 4 laps behind them. That's how quickly the leaders are going in comparison with the men behind them. Lap 68. Rosberg, Watson, and now Rosberg and Watson are both closing up on somebody that they are going to lap, and this could be a problem for one or both of them.
Well, of course, the problem, the disadvantage always rests with the guy in the lead, because he's the only person with anything to lose if they do get into trouble with back markers. But there goes Rosberg safely round one of them, but there's a bit of traffic in front. Watson still very close behind, but not quite close enough yet. He needs a little bit of help there to get enough time to pass.
And Watson has passed Raoul Barcel again. That was the man that Keke Rosberg passed. And now Watson is tackling Eddie Cheever, and he's passed him. It's going to be an absolutely terrific last 2 laps. They're coming into lap 69 now. The gap is 0.97 seconds, less than 1 second in this unexpectedly, tremendously exciting finish to the 1982 Belgian Grand Prix. And there is no doubt at all about the fact that Keke Rosberg will now be a worried man, but he has a considerable amount of experience. On the other hand, John Watson has got even more, and he's now right up with him.
Yes, Watson is now in a position to attempt to overtake, and Rosberg, you can see, is taking the left-hand side of the straight to make sure that he has the inside line when they turn into the chicane at the end. He's kept that all in one piece, but Watson will be looking for ways round. But I think Rosberg has the experience and the lack of inhibition to blatantly block for this time. I would think that it would be poor effort if he let Watson pass. The circuit is not conducive to overtaking. 2 laps to go, but this is where Watson should be attacking if he's going to, but he's dropped back a bit. He wasn't really in position to attack there for some reason.
Down to the Boulderberg, and off goes Rosberg, and Watson is through. Change of lead. Rosberg goes out, hits the curbing at the side, and now, as the crowd waves, let's have a look at it again. Now, let's see where Rosberg stepped out.
Yes, well, he came in too quick there, Murray, and that really was, I have to say, a very, very poor piece of driving by Rosberg under pressure. As I was saying, it was going to be very difficult for him for Watson to pass if he blocked properly. The one thing when you're blocking somebody you don't have to do is to drive fast. There was absolutely no reason for Rosberg to arrive fast into the chicane. Watson's now on his last lap, a formality to complete now it should be, and Rosberg must be kicking himself, but that was a blatant mistake as a result of employing completely the wrong tactics. There was no reason for him to be trying to go fast, which is what happened, and he should have just been concentrating on keeping a clean line and keeping in front of Watson on the straights.
Well, Rosberg tapped his helmet for some reason, whether it was to say I need my brains testing or whether he's very tired, I know not. It makes no difference, because on the very last lap, John Watson is on his way to his 3rd World Championship victory in his long career, after having won in Britain last year and having won in Austria way back in 1976. This is going to be the 3rd Grand Prix victory for the Marlborough MP4 car, the McLaren car, and there's a disconsolate Rosberg coming through, and now John Watson is within sight of that checkered flag. He's going down the finishing straight, and the Belgian Grand Prix has been won by John Watson with, where is he? Keke Rosberg, yes, in 2nd position across the line, and then behind him, we haven't seen Lauda for a long time, should be Lauda in 3rd position, with Eddie Cheever 4th, Elio De Angelis in 5th place, and in 6th position, world champion Nelson Piquet. But Watson waving to the crowd, and he must be delighted.
Yes, a marvellous race by John Watson, because you have to remember that if he'd qualified a bit further up the grid, he wouldn't have been that far behind in the first place, because all that time that he lost and had to come from so far behind was because, of course, he started well down the grid. And terrific stuff. He kept pressing on and on and on when his car was undoubtedly going better than anybody else's, but he kept stuck in. He caught Rosberg right at the end, and then he forced the mistake, or rather I think Rosberg much more forces on himself. But there's no doubt that Rosberg was tired. His head appeared to be lolling about beforehand, but that's still no excuse, because you've got the adrenaline push of another car right behind you, and that was a great shame that Rosberg's done that.
Well, a win then for John Watson, 2nd for Keke Rosberg, 3rd Niki Lauda, and subject to official confirmation, Alain Prost still leads the World Championship.
Minute 8 Sekunden und 137 Hundertstel für Niki Lauda. Nur diese 3 in der gleichen Runde. 4. Eddie Cheever auf Talbot, Rückstand 1 Runde. 5. Elio De Angelis Lotus, Rückstand 2 Runden. 6. Nelson Piquet mit dem Breppen BMW Turbo, der zum ersten Mal als einen Grand Prix beendet hat, An der 6. Stelle Rückstand 3 Runden. 7. Chico Serra, sein brasilianischer Landsmann, Fahrer des Fittipaldi-Teams, ebenfalls 3 Runden Rückstand. Piquet hat Serra also kurz vor Schluss noch überholt. In der Weltmeisterschaft führt Prost mit 18 Punkten, vor Watson mit 17, Lauda mit 16, Rosberg mit 14, Alboreto und Pironi je 10, Villeneuve und Reutemann je 6, Patrese und De Angelis je 4 Punkte, 18, 17, 16, 14, 10, nur 8 Punkte trennen also die ersten 6 der Weltmeisterschaft, nur 2 Punkte die ersten 3, Prost, Watson und Lauda. Ich glaube, wir dürfen uns heute schon auf einen sehr, sehr spannenden und spektakulären Grand Prix von Monte Carlo freuen. Heute in 14 Tagen dieser 6. Lauf zur Weltmeisterschaft im Fürstenparadies an der Côte d'Azur, im Fürstentum. Und hier wird einer der gestrandeten Wagen abgeschleppt, und zwar der Williams FW08 von Derek Daly. So knapp hat Rosberg seinen ersten Grand Prix-Sieg verfehlt, so knapp auch Williams seinen ersten Sieg beim Erstauftreten mit dem neuen Williams FW08. Sieg eines neuen Wagens beim ersten Rennen, das hat es ganz, ganz selten gegeben. Mir fallen auf Anhieb ein die Ferrari von, das ist der Tyrrell übrigens von Hendon, mir fallen ein die Ferrari von Scheckter und Villeneuve, die 1979 Kyalami gewonnen haben. Dann natürlich der Wolf, mit dem Jody Scheckter 1977 beim ersten Einsatz in Buenos Aires gewonnen hat, und aus der Vorkriegszeit natürlich der berühmte Mercedes und